Yeah, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cabinet ministers will spend the next 3 days here in Halifax trying to figure out how to improve their political fortunes. Liberals, of course, have been trailing the Conservatives badly in the polls for over a year now. The focus here at this cabinet retreat is figuring out better ways to sell the government's attempts to deal with the cost of living crisis and the problem of housing supply. Now, Liberals had hoped the measures in the federal budget back in the spring would have swayed some voters, but public opinion polling suggests that really hasn't happened. So we'll hear a lot over the next few days without that familiar message about trying to help the middle class, with a lot of emphasis on the national child care and national dental care programs the Liberals have launched. Even before the meetings kicked off, Housing Minister Sean Fraser today announced details of a program that will see the government leasing federal lands to developers to build more housing. Fraser said 56 properties, disused Canadian Forces bases, post offices, and unused office buildings will now be made available. The meetings, though, are clouded by that labor dispute between the Teamsters Union and the two main freight railways, CN and CPKC. The decision this weekend by the Canada Industrial Relations Board to force workers back to work during the binding arbitration process may have bought the government some time, but the Teamsters have said that they are going to challenge the constitutionality of that order, so this may not be resolved just yet. Now, Trudeau arrived here in Halifax earlier this afternoon. There is a pretty heavy police presence around the hotel in anticipation of these protests that seem to follow the Prime Minister wherever he goes. The retreat will also deal with Canada-US relations and the possibility of another Donald Trump presidency, depending on what happens in the election in November. And tonight, ministers will hear from U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, who is here in person in Nova Scotia to talk about NATO, the war in Ukraine, and the Israel-Hamas conflict. Now, earlier this week, there was a lot of speculation that Trudeau would shuffle his cabinet before this retreat began. But one senior government official told me today that the thinking is a shuffle wouldn't do much to change voting intentions. Most people don't pay that close attention to it. So the government is instead doubling down on its message that it's taking on the affordability crisis. Glen McGregor, City News, Halifax.